winning is not just standing at the top of the podium, right? Winning is going a best time. It's really overcoming an adversity, is coming back from injury or some negative, something perceived negatively in your life that you have to dig deeper and become something different, right? You have to reinvent yourself in some way.
Welcome to Champions Mojo Weekly Podcast with your hosts, Kelly Pallas and Maria Parker. You'll hear authentic, entertaining stories with tips, lessons, and wisdom from champions to inspire, motivate, and educate you. You'll get the tools you need for becoming a true champion in your own life. And now, your host, Kelly Pallas.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Champions Mojo Podcast, where I am co-hosting with Maria Parker. We have a fantastic show for you today. We'll be talking with the University of Louisville head swim coach for the men and the women, Arthur Albiero, who gives us some real perspective on winning. So Maria, hello, friend.
Hi, Kelly. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I am doing so great. So inspired by Coach Albiero. So I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Awesome. Me too. But before we go to the interview, I want to give our listeners just a little bit more background on Coach Albiero. He is just amazing. He's been with the University of Louisville for 16 years and has methodically and thoughtfully, with his heart and his perspective, brought both his men's and women's teams to the top of the NCAA. And, to do what he did this past year, both his men and his women finished in the top 5. So his women were 4th at NCAAs this year and his men were 5th. And that is really unprecedented. That is the most successful combined program. Now, there are programs, like Cal or Stanford that have separate men's or women's coaches that finished above them. But for one staff to coach both men and women and finish in the top 5 is just amazing. Also, Coach Albiero is, he's a national team coach. He's had multiple NCAA champions. He's been ACC Coach of the Year this year. He was the Women's ACC Coach of the Year. His own son, Nick, who swims for him, is, a real top swimmer in the country. And he coached Kelsey Worrell-Dahlia to an Olympic gold medal, which is another unique part of his story. His wife is a coach. There's just so much that he has on his resume. I could talk about him all day, but I want to go ahead and get right to his interview because he just is full of some really great wisdom and wonderful stuff that I want to talk with you about afterwards. So are you ready to hear the interview?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing Coach Albiero. I know he's an incredibly wise and humble man. Let's hear the interview.
Beautiful.
And now it's time for the road trip segment.
Welcome to Champions Mojo, Coach Albiero. Thank you so much for your time. Great to have you.
Appreciate the opportunity. My pleasure.
Wonderful. So, Coach, we are talking with swimmers and non-swimmers. And one of the things that we like to do on Champions Mojo is take those techniques that champions use and extrapolate them to the real world. So what techniques did you learn when you were an athlete, 18-time All-American, and swimming so great, winning national titles as an athlete, that you're now using as a successful coach?
I think learning how to fail. That was an important piece of it, right? Because, I was really hard on myself through a stretch there where I felt like I did everything right. I committed. I sacrificed, right? Air quotes. I sacrificed all these things at that age, and yet I expected to get a return out of it, and that's not a great way to go into something, So learning how to fail in that situation and really. Probably took me a moment to get to that, but certainly in my coaching career, it's a quote that I picked up from Jim Steen in my years, working, learning from him really at Kenyon College, in the Division III setting, right? To really, the idea is it's you got to find a place within yourself where success and failure do not matter. And that quote has stayed with me for all my years in coaching now, 23 And, it's something that I use often with athletes. And really, it's almost you have to be able to disconnect the emotion of potential failure to the actual failure and be open that, yes, failure is a possibility. It's possible that you do everything and you may fail. And you have to be okay with that. And it's not failure as long as you really learn from that.
Yes.
And you can turn that around and create that into positive energy in some way, shape, or form. So to me, that applies to everything in life, right? And
yeah, sure.
Just having had a conversation with my oldest son, who's 23 and is discussing wedding plans with his fiancée now. I mean, there's some different things that come to play in that, but in many ways, it's about the same thing. Like, yes, go have fun with it.
Right,
and finding that place back to the athletic realm, and really, even my wife, we wanted to open a swim school, which we're in the middle of that, and I say we very loosely because she's the one running it. I'm just a cheerleader right now, but we just thought about that, like, we got to be willing to take a risk, and it's a big risk, but I don't want to regret. I don't want to look back at this and say, we missed the window, so we're going to give it a go. And I think that's something that stays with me often, of just be willing to take a risk. Yes, there's always potential that things may not break your way, but be okay with that idea.
So when you say that your athletes are okay with losing or winning, what do you mean by the winning part? You explained the failing part, but are they just, yeah.
I think sometimes winning brings a different set of perceived responsibilities.
Okay.
Right? Because if you want something, all of a sudden you feel like now you're defending, right? So we touched on Mallory earlier, where, okay, here's Mallory, she won NCAA, so then the next year, well, it's not as easy the second time around, right? Or Joao DeLuca, when he won the first year, he was chasing. And then next year, as much as we fought all year to not get into this mode of defending, right? The world kept coming back, hey, you're defending champion. And that adds, to me, that's way too heavy, right? So we try to keep it. If you win, that's great. Take it, appreciate it. That's awesome. That's what we work for. Let's not kid ourselves, right? We're trying to win. I mean, we play to win the game, right?
Yes.
But at the end of the day, I think in our sport, what's so unique about swimming, right? Winning is not just standing at the top of the podium, right? Winning is going a best time. It's really overcoming an adversity, is coming back from injury or some negative, something perceived negatively in your life that you have to dig deeper and become something different, right? You have to reinvent yourself in some way. So to me, that's part of what this whole process. I mean, if things don't go your way, reinvent yourself. If things went your way, great. You still need to reinvent yourself. So we always talk about, we're going to go to a meet, we're going to compete hard, and win, lose, or draw, which there's not really such a thing in swimming, right? There's a tie, but as a team, right? There's not really a draw as a team, but win, lose, or draw, we're going to go get a sandwich afterwards, right? And it makes it's personal. Like, it's because you win or you lose doesn't mean that our relationship is any different, right? We're still in this together. We're still partners, right? And that's an important piece for us as a program. And really, I think if you look at the athletes that have been really successful here, it's a full-on partnership.
Beautiful. I love it. Your team is the #1 combined team in the country. No one did it better than the University of Louisville, where the men finished 5th and the women finished on the podium with a gigantic trophy and NCAA's
awesome.
4th and 5th. Congratulations, Coach. I mean, that is just amazing. To get one program in the top 10 is amazing. To get 2 programs in the top 5 is truly, truly unprecedented. So, what is the hardest part of coaching a combined program to that level?
Well, and I think to your point, right, this is and I appreciate you saying that, and I think, if anything, we're at fault for trying to move to the next thing, right? And I think that's what driven individuals, organizations do. As soon as you achieve something, that's great, but in all honesty, before the meet was even over, when it looked like we were going to be able to achieve that, our minds as a staff went full on to, okay, what do we do next? What kind of pieces of the puzzle do we have to move? What are we missing? How do we, you don't really replace people, but how do we somehow cover some of those areas, And I think my wife always criticizes me that maybe it's an encouragement or coaching, I would call it that, where we're sometimes we're too quick to move on, and we needed to linger on this one a little bit longer because, to your point, this is very special.
Very special.
It's very special for any program. The fact that we're the only combined program that was able to achieve that, I think, speaks for itself. But ultimately, if you go just a little bit further down the memory lane here and you look at what we were 16 years ago when I first got here, to a program that had I could say not a winning culture, and for a million different reasons, right? I mean, good people were involved, but the structure, ultimately the culture that we had to create, I think, is something that I'm most proud of, and the results become a consequence of that, But so ultimately, our focus has been on how do we continue to get a little bit better. Yes, at one point, probably 3-4 years ago, we kind of launched this idea of, how can we get a trophy? We want to bring a trophy home, and those things don't happen overnight. Certainly, what we are, and really, I think if you look at our program, what we've done best is we develop people. Right? You look at our recruiting classes are not. I don't mean that disrespectfully in any other way, but the kids are good people, right? And that's what we go for. We want to find good people that are hungry. They have the right heart. They're going to match with us, and that's one of the things we always say. If we have the right heart, then amazing things can happen, right? And so we spend a lot of time looking for the right heart in the people that want to come and be bold enough to come in and do something crazy, right? Because Louisville swimming, again, even if you look 10 years ago, the fact that our very first female NCAA qualifier was in 2009. It's only the 10th year that we've gone to NCAA. So if you think of that way, it's a really, really short history compared to programs that have been around a long, long time. So I think not only what we have achieved is special, but I think when you put that in kind of historical perspective a little bit, it's we use the word absurd internally. Now your listeners already know about it, but what we achieved was absurd. It was absurd, it was definitely I think a combination of a lot of things. But it starts with my staff, right? If I've done one really good thing here is I've surrounded myself with great people who happen to be as passionate as I am about the sport, and maybe more importantly, as passionate or even more than I am about developing people and helping people achieve amazing things. So I'm fortunate to work with four coaches that all four swim for me, which I'm not sure if that's good or bad. But there's a level of connection in that dynamic that I think is very unique. And I think it allowed us to be better coaches for athletes.
Very nice, very nice. And what would you say, how do you approach coaching men versus women?
It's a balance, and I think I love being a combined program. And in all fairness, that's been my experience for all the years that I've been around. In my swimming college at Oakland University was actually separate, and same thing at Cal State Bakersfield where I started. And there are some different dynamics that comes with that. But at the end of the day, what I have found in terms of development, it's a win-win, right? What I find is the best women by and large can train at a little bit higher level, a little bit more consistently. So they're constantly challenging the guys, right? And then so you take somebody like Mallory, the level that she's been in, 139 freestyler. There's not many girls in the country that can produce that kind of effort, right? So the reality is, no matter where she would go, there'll be limited opportunities of people that can really challenge in some specific sets, right? Well, then she lines up with, our guys, and next thing you know, she's chasing them, right? Which makes her better, and the guys are swimming for their lives because they do not want to get beat, right? And it happens. It happens, occasionally where, and it's a win-win, right? Because she has nothing to lose. She's just chasing the guy. So I think from that standpoint, I've seen the growth on both sides, and I think if you ask them, they'll prefer it that way. And if you think about it again, prospectively, in our sport, we're one of the few sports that boys and girls grow up swimming together. It's natural. Yeah. There's nothing unusual about that. So I think it's an environment that I think has been really healthy. And like always, you have to manage things. Different genders, they need different things from me at different times. there's this constant little joking side that, the boys say I'm the women's coach and the women say I'm the men's coach. So either way, I'm an equal opportunity offender. So everybody thinks, I'm not giving everything I got. And that's the challenge, right, for me personally on how to be everything for everybody. And that's where it goes back to my staff and being surrounded with great people who are loyal to me personally, but to our mission, right, to our program.
Very good, very good. And your son, Nicholas, and do you call him Nick?
Nick, yes.
Yeah. So arguably, he's got a real shot to make the 2020 Olympic team.
Oh, you went there, huh?
And,
you went.
I'm not going to know. I don't want to talk about that. I am just going to say, I'm saying that to say how great he is to our listeners that don't know how great he is. Because there's
Sure.
some swimmers out there. I mean, non-swimmers. So what I want to know, I just want to show our listeners that this is a swimmer that could make our Olympic team, arguably or not. But my question is,
you have a shot. You have a lane. If you have a lane, you have a shot.
And he's been consistently in the top 8 of the country at the highest level, which I think the NCAA meant. So he's a consistent top 8 finisher. So how do you coach him as your son?
Yeah, this all goes back to the whole gene pool conversation, right? I brought to the right side from my wife's side, but I think part of it is and that's a real challenge, right? As much as I love it, and I think you'll be the first one to tell you, we've all had to learn how to play new roles, and it's almost like to the point where we communicate openly to say, okay, now I'm speaking as a dad. And now I'm speaking as a coach, and he, vice versa, he'll say the same thing as an athlete, and then he'll say whatever he wants to say, or if the conversation needs to shift, he'll say, okay, I'm speaking as your son now, right? And I think it's an important balance because in this environment here, right, in the high energy, high intensity coaching, in the middle of a lot of moving parts, I cannot be dad, right?
Right.
I'm coach. And he understands that. And that's something that I think our children have understood early on that, with my wife also being a coach. So they grew up in this environment where, they are constantly challenged because it's a lot of the times we always have our coaching hats on, right? Even as parenting. And that's something that we had to work, my wife and I, on how to separate things, right? And I think a big part of this is understanding the personality, right? And goes back to coaching and how we coach everybody else. So the question is, how do I coach my son? Not any different than I coach anybody else. And probably, at times I probably stay on the coach side a little too long. For example, you brought up when he won ACCs for the first time. I didn't celebrate as a dad.
How could you not?
Because I'm full on coach at that moment, right? So my approach as a coach at that mode is, okay, Nick won, that's great. But then, we had somebody else in the race who didn't go as well.
Oh, okay,
and so,
right.
So as a coach, I'm in the middle of a difficult situation where as a dad, I want to explode and,
on the inside, what were you
100%,
thinking?
100%. I'm like, I cannot believe that's my boy.
Yeah.
But as a coach, I'm managing the moment, right? So I'm managing the team. So it's a really important distinction. And again, I think he understands that more than ever. That we can celebrate at home, right?
Right.
We can celebrate as a son and dad in a different setting, but at that moment, I'm coach. Yeah. And I get challenged often by my staff that it's okay for me to be dad more often in moments like that. I'm learning how to do that.
Boy, but that so puts it in perspective because I was sitting in the stands watching you, and it so moved me to tears. But to explain that you had another swimmer in there that did not perform as well, what a professional you are. I mean, that is just amazing to have put that in perspective. And my husband was with me, and he's here now, as people will know. But yeah, we both just were like, wow, that is such a special moment we just got to see. And to not see you just like rip your shirt off and jump off the 10-meter tower was what I thought might happen. But,
I was really proud of him. And really, it was a tough week. His first really full-on college experience.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of meet when you go to ACCs and NCAAs. It's a 3.5-day marathon. And the mental toughness and the ability to get up and down and recover and stay on task is probably the biggest challenge we find in how we prepare people the most. It's for that it's nothing really to do with swimming at that point.
Right.
It's the mental game, the emotional game, the energy management game. It's a really important piece of it. So the fact that was the 7th session, he was able to put together arguably maybe his best swim of the whole weekend. It says a lot about the training, the preparation, and ultimately I think of his toughness and how he was able to really put himself in that position. And then he did that again this year at NCAAs on his, if I remember correctly, I think his 12th swim of the meet, right? To go his lifetime best in a 200 fly, and finish 4th. And to me, that was an incredible moment for him. And it leads to other things in the future. But I think at the end of the day, it's progression. That's always what we're looking for.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm glad to get the inside scoop on that. So, one thing that I'm asking all the coaches, which I think is really a great question, what attributes do you think makes a champion? Just a few, maybe 3 that you think out there.
Well, I think first things first, right? You have to have the ability to imagine that. I think it starts with that. It's if you don't set something out, it's going to be really nearly impossible to get there, right? Because you don't know where you're going. So it starts with that. You set up something crazy, borderline stupid, right? So when I took over the job at Louisville 16 years ago, we were nowhere to be found in the rankings. And, one of the very, very first interviews I talked about, I think we can be top 20 in the country. And people are looking at me like this guy is crazy. And at that time it was crazy, but it gave us a clear goal. And I think it aligns all the decision-making processes along the way of, does this put me closer or further from this idea, right? So then somewhat unconsciously you start working towards that and really making decisions that give you the better chance. And so ultimately for us it's been putting ourselves in that position and then working with champions, right? And again, champion, yes, you won NCAAs, you were a champion, but we've had a lot of champions who overcame injuries, adversity, family death, and these people are champions in life today, right? They're doctors, they're engineers, they're nurses, they're business owners. I mean, they're people that are very high achieving in life. But it wasn't always like that. They had to overcome something, right? So to me, that's the key. It starts with the ultimate goal in mind, and sometimes to share a big, bold vision like that is scary. But I think you need to find your circle of trust that really can encourage you and empower you, right? And I'll share a quick story. When I realized that we changed the culture at Louisville Swimming, in the very first year, we're in a team meeting and people are sharing some of their goals publicly in this team setting, right? Public, I should say publicly, corporately, right? But it's, you're sharing your heart. And there's a lot of, there's a risk involved in that. So somebody got up and said, I want to make NCAAs. And again, this is early years of our program. We never had anybody really make it. So that was like, whoa. And you could tell when that person said that, the rest of the room were kind of like, yeah, whatever, right? Maybe they didn't say it, but you could feel it. That was like, yeah, sure. We have no idea what you're talking about, little Johnny. And then fast forward that to a few years, a little bit more recently, where, somebody stood up and said, hey, you know what? I want to win NCAAs. And across the room, somebody gets up and like, that's awesome, right? Yeah. That's it, man. You know what? I'm going to support you. That's freaking awesome. And to me, that's culture, right? Where it's okay. Not everybody needs to win, but to support the people that are in that position. And then in that process, guess what? You win too, right? Yeah. So as a team, when we achieve something pretty special, there's no distinction. Oh, this person, as a team, it's a team thing. And that's what I love about college swimming. It's taking our individual sport, very individual as we know, but it really an awesome team setting. And I was a team guy. I loved that about my college experience. I was better because of my team. And ultimately, that's the mindset that we try to bring every day.
So what else besides a big vision?
And then you have to be consistent, right? And it's great you have this big vision. It sets the course, if you will. But then what do you do today that's going to help you get there? So then it's taking the idea of, and I've used this analogy of, okay, just, focus on the next 5 minutes. Be the best you can be for the next 5 minutes. And then after that, then you get another 5 minutes. And then you focus on the next 5 minutes. What can you do now, right? And really make it almost way too simple. right? Because I think ultimately as a coach, that's one of the things I try to do is I want to make things simple for the athletes, right? Put them in a position where they can be successful, but not because this is massive, complex goal. It's just, hey, just be really good for the next 5 minutes. Oh, I can do that. Anybody can do that, right? And so it's a matter of focus. And then ultimately, all those things kind of connect with how do you manage distractions. I didn't say eliminate. I didn't say avoid. They're there. They're going to be there. And distractions sometimes are a well-meaning coach could be a distraction, right? Your parent, from an athlete mindset, it could be a distraction, right? Your teammate, or other things that are way outside of your control. How do you manage those things? Because they're going to happen. They're clearly going to happen. So in understanding that the success line is not a straight line from point A to point B and it just skyrockets, right? It's a mumble-jumble, zigzag. It's a little bit of everything. And I think if you talk to any champion, right, they'll be the first one to tell you there's a story behind that, and it wasn't always pretty. And I think sometimes we all get caught up because we see that on TV or we see in the ads, like, wow, look at that. It's a champion, right? Well, you get to know that person. You understand that they're regular Joe, like regular Susie. They have 2 legs and 2 arms, and they had some difficulties to get there. Everybody has a story. So I think once people can understand that a little bit, it makes it real. It makes it more, it makes human, right? It's a human nature to go through some of these emotions and to battle some of these adversities. But the consistency, you set the goal, and then you find a way to be consistent, and then you got to manage the distractions, and they're coming.
I love it. And that's great for swimming or life, whatever. So that ties in a little bit to the next question, if not answers the next question. But so this particular question is for non-swimmers. You just have somebody come in your office and they say, I have a big goal I want to achieve. How would you tell me to get there?
I think it starts my very first question, right? What came to my heart here immediately is why? Why do you want to do that? What do you think that does for you, right? Because I think sometimes we create these goals and we think, oh, if I do this, then I can get X, Y, and Z. And then halfway through you realize that's really not the goal, right? So I think it's almost like we need to peel the layers a little bit more to understand, okay, why do you want to do this? And I think that's a big question for all of us. Why? Why am I doing this? Why do I coach? Why do I get up at the crazy hours that I do? Why do I keep the schedule that I do? Why do I spend more days on the road than I do at home? Right? Why?
Oh. So that is gold. So I have to ask you now, why do you do what you do? Yeah,
that's a good question, right? I was afraid you're going to say that as I was saying that, and I try to be quick and think through it. But the response from the heart is simple. It's I love watching people do crazy things, achieve sometimes things way bigger than they thought they could achieve, right? So as a coach, it's that moment. And yes, it's that moment when somebody wins NCAAs or somebody makes a team or somebody gets a medal internationally. Yes, it's part of it. There's plenty of those other moments where you just watch somebody do something that was so far-fetched when they started, right? And to me, it's all about, it's not where you start. We all have different starting points, but how do you finish? How do you end this journey, this task, right? And so I want to see people through it. And in that process, right, they become a better version of themselves, which ultimately leads to doctors, engineers, professionals in life, moms and dads, and all the other endeavors, right? Because if you think about it in the great scheme of things, swim coaches, we have a joke. Friends don't let friends become swim coaches. But a lot of these kids have an interest, right? They want to be part of that. They see what we do. But I want to be real and honest with them. Like, understand this is the ins and outs of the profession, right? And it's important to know. So it goes back to the why. And so my why is I love to prove people wrong, if you will, right? Quick side note of that, it's 2 weeks I've been in Louisville and I took over the program. I really didn't fully understand at the height of 29 years of age what I was getting into. Taking over a program that, had limited history, limited support, limited funding, limited everything, limited facilities. We had a lot of limitation, but we had a vision. And my athletic director at the time was a visionary guy and kind of sold me on the vision before what it was, right? So we spend a lot of time focusing on what it can be, not on what it is. And I come in with this great, I'm excited, this is awesome, great energy. And then a couple weeks into it, the reality starts to set in, right? So I go to visit a recruit, and he lets me talk for a little bit. This is 2 weeks in the job now. And I'm selling this idea, this dream, this vision. I'm coming, we're going. And he says to me, honestly, he says, Coach, I'll be honest with you. Anybody in this region who would consider high-level swimming would really not consider Louisville. And thank you for your time. Wow. It was brutal, right? But I am grateful to that kid, because 16 years later, that still drives me, right? Yeah. It's probably why I'm still here and more excited than ever to be here, right?
Isn't that up on your wall right there in your office?
It has to be, right? Because to me, that's I love that, because we're just changing history. It would have been easy to take that and say, yeah, you're right. I'm going to go work at Carmex. Right? And I had to make a decision. I use that story because I had to make a decision, right? This is it's a saying I saw sometime in a sandwich place. It said, confidence is what you have before you fully understand the situation. And I was very confident coming in, but then I started understanding the situation. And then I had to make a decision. I had to commit. Am I going to work to change that, or am I going to accept that? And I think we all have moments in that in our lives, and whether athletics, personal, business, family, I mean, we have to make some hard decisions, right? And to me, that was a catalyst of, okay, I don't like that, so I'm going to work to change that. And then, one thing has led to another, and here we are 16 years later. So I think that motivated me and drove me, and I love that. And I love the fact that when you look at, to what we were saying earlier, the fact that we're the only combined program in the country to be in the top 5, and you look at the history of our NCAA swimming and the number of incredible, high-level, achieving historical programs, and yet somehow Louisville is at the top of that list. I love that, right? And that was so much last year, and so we got a lot of work to do now. But that's exciting, right? And I think it's special to take a moment to appreciate that, celebrate that, and really the celebration to me is the 16 years, right? If somebody says to me, oh, what a great job coaching this year, right, on year 16. And I'm almost offended, because I'm like, what about the 15 years before that and everything that we've done to build something from, very little, if close to nothing, to something where we are right now that we can be very proud of. That's been a journey, right? So it's not 1 year. It's not one moment. It's just a combination of a lot of decisions along the way, and a lot of work by a lot of people.
Shows it doesn't happen overnight, that's for sure. Well, this has just been awesome. So my very last question for you is there anything else that you would like listeners to know about you or Louisville or swimming or anything?
Well, I think, it's funny, because when I came to Louisville, I had no idea about this city. And the first time somebody approached me and said, hey, Louisville has an opening, you should take a look. And my first response, it was, Louis who? What are you talking about? It shows a little bit of ignorance on my part at the time. I knew a little bit about the city, but I had no idea. And, so after I came for my interview, I went from being skeptical, in full honesty here, to one day into it, I'm like, holy moly, this could be awesome, right? This could be a great place for my family. And my wife couldn't make the interview. Everything happened real quick, and we had 3 little ones at the time. And so I came by myself, and she made me promise I wasn't going to make any decisions without her. And I had to break that, because the opportunity kind of came, and then the conversation flowed that way, and they offered me the job at the end of the second day, and I took it, and I accepted. And I somewhat understood what it meant. I learned the hard way. There was many more challenges, but I love the city. Right? It's been a fantastic place to raise a family. My children love living here. My wife, she's from Ohio originally, and so we're not that far from her family. But it's been a great place to raise a family, to be involved in athletics. Right? The fact that we have a really good sized city, but yet we don't have really major professional. We don't have an NFL team or an NBA team, right? So really, University of Louisville athletics, it's kind of the show in town. And people will show up for certainly football, basketball, but they also show up for a swim meet, for a lacrosse game, right? I remember watching a soccer match, and it was snowing, right, a few years back, and it was a NCAA tournament game. And, I mean, there were people everywhere, right? So I think it says a lot about this community. It's a community that values athletics. It's a community that appreciates high-level competition and supports it. And, and I think as a coach on the other side, the university piece, so what that does, it creates some incredible opportunities for athletes, right, as they're graduating and moving on to other things in life, that the network that you can have right here in this community is pretty incredible, right? Because again, all these major corporations, our sponsors are involved, they're supporters of all of our programs. We get to know people in the businesses in different areas. So it does allow for kind of a really high level networking for our student athletes in terms of where they go next. And as a coach who's turning 46 here, it's a constant thought process of mine is, yes, we're swimming right here and this is everything. We're fully focused on the task at hand, and it's hard to understand that as 18, 19 years old, but this is preparation for bigger and better things that are coming for you, right? And I think it served us well to have this kind of mentality. But it's been a great place, and the support from the athletic department has been second to none. That's why I'm still here, 16 years later now, and I feel like I was very fortunate to be in the right place, right time, and be in this position. So I never take that for granted. I see it as a great blessing, and my position and my family and my faith is it was a God thing for us to end up in Louisville, and we feel like when you're in the right place, life flourishes, and we feel very grateful.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we've just barely gone over our 30 minutes with a little bit of extra, but I really appreciate your time. It's been wonderful spending time with you today. I've learned a lot. I know our listeners have too. Thank you so much, and best of luck with all you've got coming up. I
appreciate that. Thank you for the opportunity.
So, Maria, what interview, huh?
Yeah, that was incredible. He needs to go on the road. Every word out of his mouth is a pearl of wisdom. And what was really impressive to me is just his humility. I mean, he laughing about how his wife was a better swimmer, and giving a lot of credit to his team, and he just seems like a beautiful man.
Yeah, it was really fun to talk with him. I think the time just flew by. My husband was there with me, and we were sitting in his office, as you can tell from the interview. But yeah, it was really a fun interview. And what were your main takeaways? Because there was so much there, but I want us to each just highlight a couple of, or one or two items that really stuck with us.
Well, there was, as you said, there was so much, and I love what he had to say about just about everything. But I think in listening to it, I was thinking of a friend who's starting a business, and the business is languishing a little bit. And so when Coach talked about the attributes of a champion, I actually thought, I want to remember every word of this and repeat it to my friend about the business. And so what the three main things that Coach mentioned were, the first thing is you have to imagine, state your goal. And he used words like crazy, stupid, absurd goals. So, I mean, he said, make a goal, I guess, that inspires you, that's big enough, to make your heart beat. So, I was thinking about that, like what is the, what's the goal? What is your absurd goal with this? And then the second thing he talked about is, then being consistent and moving towards that goal. Like, what are you doing this 5 minutes? And then the next 5 minutes, it was kind of, the step-by-step thinking, how can you be consistent in working toward that crazy, absurd goal? And you can't, you can only do the next right thing. And, I loved that he talked about the next 5 minutes. What's the best thing that I can do in the next 5 minutes? And that moving towards your goal is not always a straight line. So, and he says any champion will tell you that. And that led to the third thing, which is manage distractions, which is, and I thought it was a really interesting way to put, what do you do when you have adversity? It's distractions are adversity. And, first of all, you got to figure out what the distraction is. Maybe it's a simple distraction, like, you're distracted by Facebook or your time management's not good. Or maybe it's, you truly have, a person or something in, that's keeping you from moving towards your goal. So you have to manage those. And I think when he says manage, I think partly it's identifying them, right? It's identifying, what is the distraction? What's keeping me from doing the next 5 minutes towards my goal? So I just thought, I'm going to remember this, and I'm going to talk to my friend. I'm going to encourage my friend with these 3 things, because I think that encapsulates everything. What did you think, Kelly?
I love it. So big imagination, put that vision out there, no matter how absurd it is, consistently work after it, and then manage your distractions. Yeah, I loved that. I had
And
two,
what were I know you had some other takeaways.
Yeah, I had 2 little smaller items. One, I loved that he said win or lose shouldn't matter. So that, that's a theme, again, we hear. I think, Zane Grothe talked about that in his interview back in our podcast before this, where, as long as you do your best, you're still the great person that you are. If you lose, it's okay. If you win, it's okay. You just, afterwards, you go out and you get a sandwich. So I really liked, just that.
Win or lose, you get a sandwich.
Because, you talk about teaching people to lose, but then he went even further and talked about teaching people to win, that, maybe you don't get a giant head because you win, and then you don't perform, you perform differently because you have a giant head because you won, or you have a small head, you lose your confidence because you lose. So I liked just dealing with win or lose. And, that's kind of like the Rudyard Kipling poem, treat those 2 imposters just the same.
Yes.
So I love that, that those are they're both kind of imposters, because at the end of the day,
you're still you.
You're still you, win or lose. But the big one for me was that when I asked him, what advice would you give to somebody going after a big goal? He said, ask them why. And I love that, because you've got to have the why behind why you're getting up earlier, why you want to start the business, or why you're doing what you're doing. And then I asked him, what drives him, and it led to one of my favorite stories that he told was when he first started recruiting. He was just 2 weeks into the job, and he ran into a recruit who basically said, "Hey, coach, nobody who's serious in this area is going to go to Louisville." And
I love that story too.
It just
because it kind of took he had this big vision, and it sort of took the wind out of his sails at first. But really, that was just. But he did, right? I mean, in the end, he did exactly what he set out to do. He had this incredibly absurd, stupid, crazy goal, and he did it.
Yes, and he said his why is he loves to prove people wrong. And that guy, he said he still thinks of that 16 years later. But he also said that his why is he likes to see how far people can go. So it was a kind of a combination. But those were my 2 main things. And then, of course, your traits of a champion. So I really, really liked those a lot. And, I can listen to that. I think I've listened to the interview about 4 times already. And every time I hear something new. So I would encourage our listeners to re-listen to his interview multiple times, because there is so much in there. There's more than what Kelly and I are talking about. Yeah. So what action item would you think would be good ones to take out of this? One action item.
Well, here would be my suggestion. So the idea of, what's the goal? Goal is to me, it's a difficult and boring word, but imagine what you're intending to achieve. And then, and this is really important for me. Okay, so write it down. You have to put it into words, write it down. That's important. And for me, I need to also tell people. I don't have to tell the whole world. I don't have to publish it on Facebook. But I need to tell a few people in my life who I know love me and care for me and will help me to achieve my goal. So I would say, figure out what the goal is. Imagine your crazy, stupid, absurd, as Coach says, absurd goal. And then tell somebody. Tell somebody who you know will support you in it. Tell 2 or 3 people. Tell a small, safe group. This is what I'm going for. And then in the low moments when you don't believe in yourself, hopefully they'll believe in you. Or at least in my case, I'll be embarrassed enough that I said it to somebody that I'll want to keep after it because I like to do what I say I'm going to do. So what were your takeaways, Kelly? I mean, your action item.
My action item would be similar to yours. So once you have that goal, so your action item is take that goal, write it down, think of the craziest, most absurd, most crazy, borderline crazy, as he said, goal that you could get. And then the next thing would be write the why. Like, why do I want this? And then see if that resonates. See if that is something that's going to wake you up, with passion every morning. But the why is really key. And I love the why. So just this is a nice 2-step action item for everybody where take that goal, something that you want, write some absurd goal, and then write why you want that goal. So
I like that action. In fact, I'm going to do it right now in front of everybody here who's listening to this podcast, because one of my activities is that I sell recumbent bicycles. I am the CEO of Cruise Bike, which is a recumbent bicycle company, and my goal is to sell $5 million of cruise bikes a year. And I'm, way, way, way far away from that. That is a crazy, absurd, stupid goal. But that is my goal. And so I'm saying that out loud. but I loved the idea of why. And I was thinking, okay, what is the why behind that? Because I can't get up and do the hard work every day unless the why is good for me. And it's not of course I'd love to make money at it, but my why is I really believe that our bicycles will make the world a better place. And so I have this vision of like 1 in 5 people I see on a bicycle is on a cruise bike. They're recumbent, they're comfortable, and then that many, many, many more people, a large percentage of the population is now riding who couldn't ride or were uncomfortable riding before. So my why is to bring the joy of cycling to people who can't do it comfortably now. So I loved Coach's concept there, with the why, and I like that you brought it up because that helps me, and keeping that why foremost also helps you stay motivated as you start to work towards your consistent steps to reach your goals.
That's beautiful, Maria. And I think absolutely those cruise bikes, the recumbent style, they're much safer than other bikes. They're much more comfortable. They don't crush the perineal nerve, and it's perineal, right? Perineal nerve.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And
in any case, they're fun and they bring joy. And
they bring joy, and they're fun, and they're safer, and they're healthier. Right. And so, that would be great to do. And since you've gone there, I my crazy absurd goal is I'm really obsessed with our podcast for Champions Mojo, and I want to reach 1 million subscribers. I see YouTube people out there, and we're way far away. Talk about crazy and absurd, but I think we can do it. One day we'll be celebrating our 100th episode, and we'll have 1 million subscribers. And the why is
that the goal, Kelly? Is it 1 million subscribers?
1 million subscribers on YouTube.
I love it.
Yeah. And then, but the why is because I truly, truly believe that what we discuss on these shows helps people, and yes. I have been helped so much by so many similar products and services, just, motivational videos, motivational CDs, motivational talks. And I'm hoping that, the why is that I really want to help people. It's just, I wake up in the morning and I think, what can I do to make the world a better place? And I believe that this podcast will help people achieve better live better, healthier, happier lives. And so that's the why for me. And it's easy. It's really fun. Like I totally
agree.
I love it. Like I don't, there are some tedious work parts of it, but for the most part, I just love it. And that would be my goal and my why. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm glad you're on this journey with me. So
yeah, it's terrific. I agree. I mean, just listening to the wise people that we've had on the show has been inspirational and changed my life already. So I think this does have the potential to make many people's lives better.
Wonderful. So. Let's hold that vision. All right. Well, there is another show wrapped, and we're so thankful to Coach Albiero for being with us today, and hope that you've had a great time with us, and hope that you'll join us next week.
Yes. Thanks, Kelly. I loved today's show,
yep.
And thanks for listening.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This week's quote of the week comes from Rudyard Kipling. Triumph and disaster are both imposters.
We are so grateful that you spent this time with us today, and we hope that you heard something that inspired, motivated, and educated you. Please see below for our copy of the show notes for any links or important information referenced here. Signing off for myself and champion co-host Kelly Pallas, we hope you'll join us again soon, and we know you can be a champion. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to the Champions Mojo podcast, designed to make you feel inspired, motivated, and educated. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. Also visit championsmojo.com to learn more.